How's it going, everybody? Welcome to day 3 of making gifts in the shop for family and friends. Today we're going to be doing 3 separate projects, all of which can be done in one day because I kind of want to expedite this process. Now, of course, all of these projects can be completed with machine tools pretty easily, but I'm going to be doing it all with hand tools just to make sure everyone can be involved. So if you could do me a favor and hit the like button so this video can go out to as many people as possible, hopefully before Christmas. Now let's go get started on the first project. The first project is a tablet holder. The first thing I did for this project is I went out to my local hardwood dealer and picked up a bunch of these clearance cutoffs. I also bought these 2x6s, but I only ended up using one. I love using these kinds of things in smaller projects because the wood is so much cheaper and has all kinds of interesting figure and defects in the wood to play around with. I'm going to be putting links in the description to all of the woods I use so you can follow along in any of these projects, but keep in mind that if you buy any of these woods off of Amazon, you will be paying a premium. It's better to find a local source. Okay. Like I said, the first project I decided to try was the tablet stand. These are great for putting on a nightstand or on a desk, but my personal favorite is to put one of these into the kitchen next to you when you're cooking. There are a million different ways of doing this project, so go ahead and just hop on Google and start scrolling through the images and you'll see so many different versions of this. I decided to do a thick laminated version, so I needed to stack 5 layers of 2 different woods laminated together.
I don't need glue on that one.
For me, this meant cutting the shape first in all of my pieces with a coping saw. I cut 4 pieces out of the walnut and then 1 piece out of oak. It's a good idea to make sure you cut your pieces slightly oversized because the next step is to glue them all together, and unless you're using something like a router template, you're not going to be able to make them exactly the same. You'll have a lot of sanding to do to bring them all into plane. So cutting them oversized and being as accurate as you can in the glue up stage will be very helpful. When you're going through your designing phase, it's always good to think about where you're going to be able to fit the sander so you can sort of expedite your sanding process. I ended up needing to tape a piece of sandpaper to a dowel so I could get inside this crevice. It worked well enough for me, but it was a bit of extra work. Then after sanding through all of the grits, I decided I wanted this finish to be as smooth as possible, so I decided to use these baby wipes to get all the sawdust off the surface, and this also helps raise the grain. Then all I need to do is sand the surface down, and it becomes so much smoother. Here's a close-up of the before and after. Now it's time for my favorite step, the boiled linseed oil. This is by far one of my favorite finishes because it's incredibly easy to put on and it makes the wood look more like wood and it brings out all of its rich colors. All you have to do is slather it on, and then after about 10-ish minutes or so, you just wipe off the excess. It's easy. Project 2, the decorative coat hooks. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna start working on are these birds. These things are really cool. They're basically bird coat hooks. Basically what you do is you make a bird like this with a long tail, and then you put something like a command strip back here to hold this, and then right here is where your jacket goes, so these are really cool. One of the really fun versions of this that I've seen has a different colored head. So you have one color for the body and one color for the head, and I have 2 different ways that I'm going to achieve that because I'm gonna be making 3 of these coat hooks to kind of show you a couple different methods for how you can do this. On this one, I have this beautiful, I think this is the heartwood here, and I think this is all the sapwood. Either way, I got these 2 tones working with me right here, and it's all kind of this really cool purpley look. You can see this spot right here is kind of more or less where you want the line to be for that transition. So I'm gonna more or less line this up right here. I want the tail to be all in the sapwood, and I'm gonna go ahead and just draw that right there. So the command strips are basically 5 inches long, so as long as this tail is longer than 5 inches, you can put a command strip on this. Otherwise, you'll have to find another way of hanging them. I gotta be honest, I don't know what the right thing to do here. Hold on. Out of there. Okay, stop this. There we go. There it is. Oh, Lucy's gonna like this. Okay, so this next step might seem a little funny. So we have these 2 beautiful birds, and I'm loving the way they're looking. However, the next step is I am going to cut their heads off. And once I've decapitated them, I'm going to switch their heads over. This is not the right bird. Because I have these different contrasting woods, they're gonna look a lot better if the head of each one is just reversed. And then this third one, there we go. then this third one is going to make a lot more sense. So basically what I'm doing is I'm doing this kind of contrast here, but I'm gonna be doing that with these two pieces. So all we're gonna do is we're gonna decapitate these little guys like this. There we go. As long as I don't mistake these little heads for scrap wood, basically I'm just gonna glue this back on there, and then once they're glued, we're gonna sand them, and then they will have discolored heads. Anytime you're gluing two pieces of wood together, you're going to end up with some sort of a seam. A really easy way to get rid of this is to put a tiny bead of glue into the seam, squeegee off all the excess, and then sand over that entire surface. You can just keep repeating these steps until the entire seam is invisible. Just like I did with the tablet holder, I decided to sand through all of the grits and then finished it up with this 320 grit hand sandpaper. This is also when I go over all of the corners and ease over all of the edges. I don't really want the corners to be sanded off, I just want them to be a bit softer. And then I did the same thing I did on the last project. I raised the grains and then sanded them back down to get this beautiful finish. Then I could slather all three of these birds with the linseed oil. And since my bench also has a linseed oil finish, it's always a good time to recoat the top of my bench. Check these out.
They're so cute.
Do you know what they are?
They're birds.
They look like birds?
Yeah.
Good.
The dominoes.
Uh-huh.
That are
It's basically dominoes. That's basically what they're supposed to be. So I found out off camera that the command strips don't stick to the birds because I put an oil finish on them. So it was simple enough to fix. All I did was put a thin layer of polyurethane over the back of the bird and they stuck just fine. And project 3, a set of custom shelves. This is one of those projects you'll see floating around from time to time on Instagram. There's a few different versions of these, but I ended up going with this 2x6 method. I didn't really like any of the measurements I found online either, so I just came up with my own version and ended up only cutting 11 pieces at those measurements, which meant I ended up only needing one of my 8-foot 2x6s. So this entire project can actually be done with a single 2x6. Neat. You can definitely leave these corners on if that's the look you're going for, but I'm gonna go ahead and plane down this top section so that all of my corners are square. Okay, now that everything is cut down, I'm gonna go ahead and mark in where I want all of the screws. I'm gonna put 2 screws in each one and glue along the sides. I'm gonna argue that this joint right here is probably going to be the weakest, so I wanna make sure that that is nice and solid. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark out where I wanna pre-drill for all of my screws. I'm gonna pause for just a moment to show you the lengths of each of the pieces that I ended up using, but keep in mind the V needs to be cut at some sort of an angle. I'm not really sure what angle this is, I just sort of guessed. And then it was just a matter of screwing and gluing everything together. I love the way this thing looks. Next, I could sand through all of the grits, starting with 60 and ending with 320, just like I did on the last 2 projects. I've said on this channel before that I'm not really a big fan of using polyurethane, but it does work really well in situations that you don't mind getting a little bit of extra shine on your piece. I thought about staining this project, but I honestly made such a mess with the glue during the glue up process that I decided it was just better to skip that and go straight to the polyurethane finish. Obviously, if you're a little bit cleaner with the glue than I was, you could stain this whatever you want. Although if you are making a mess with the glue, you can always just paint it too. I really love the way this shelf project turned out. Honestly, it ended up looking a lot better than I was originally expecting. It's amazing what you can make out of something as simple as a 2x6. Although my personal favorite is a tablet stand, I know I'm gonna get a lot of use out of that. I mean the person I'm giving it to. Yeah. And Lucy's favorite is obviously the birds. Off camera, I did a few tests just to see what the birds would end up looking like, and she got all the scraps from that. She's adorable. Well, if you know me personally and you want any of these things as Christmas presents, they're all up for grabs. Well, if you found any of this helpful, don't forget to hit the like button, and I'll catch you all next time. Go make something!